This is Jackets Debrief, a show about the Columbus Blue Jackets, the National Hockey League, and part of the Hockey Podcast Network. Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Jackets Debrief. Do want to apologize to anyone who missed our midweek show. Not that you missed it, I missed it. My apologies. Wednesday, if you're an American, was a wild and crazy day. In just every terrible way it could be. So I'll be honest, what happened that day got kind of wrapped up in the news. And before I knew it, it was well past the time, and I got an email from the network saying, "Hey, when's your show coming in tonight?" I was like, "Oh, nuts, guys! Sorry about that. That didn't happen." So my apologies, guys. Shouldn't happen again. Again, we hopefully are past the whole making history part of the year. Please let us be past that. I'm so tired of living through historical events at this point. Can I just live through the boring part of history again? That would be beautiful. That was my life in the 90s. That was my life in the aughts. Well, the exception of a few things, obviously. But let's go back to living in boring times. I think we would all appreciate that very much. Anyway, starting with the beer of the week. Not really a true beer, more of a hard seltzer there. Kitty Paw from the folks at Seventh Son Brewing. This is what is this? Cherry passion fruit. So we're going to go with this. See how this goes today. Not a big fan of the smell, that's for sure. I'll be honest, if this is just one of those hard seltzers, I haven't really had those yet. So we'll see how this goes. It's very pretty. Looks almost like a flavored soda, like a Sprite or something. Bottoms up. I expected that to be a lot sweeter than it is. It's just it's good. It's solid. It's all right. I'll be honest, I'm not in love with it. Maybe hard seltzers just aren't my thing. But it's it's good. If you're wanting something sweeter, if you're looking to get something to take with you when maybe everybody else has got beer and you're wanting to not be left out on that, it's a nice little option there. It's pretty good. I'm not against it there, that's for sure. So anyway, jumping into the news of the week. Probably the big first story this week for the Blue Jackets. There was a couple of big stories, but one that I really want to take a minute to talk about is the whole practice being drastically reduced for players this week. At one point this week, out of an abundance of caution and in part of their COVID-19 protocols, the Blue Jackets had 21 players missing from a practice this week on Friday. Now, it could have been worse. The Dallas Stars, I believe, have got delays to their first couple of games because of an outbreak there. I've said this on Twitter. I want to say it to all of you guys. Be prepared for this season. Do not be shocked if games are rescheduled. I saw some people on Blue Jackets Facebook talking about, I'm going to, book a flight and go down and watch them play in Florida because we don't know if we're going to get to see them play in Columbus. Which my guess is by the end of the season, we'll have some games where fans can attend in Columbus. That's mostly based on the fact that the Cavaliers are starting to get approvals to get some fans. So I think the Blue Jackets probably get similar approvals. Me personally, I'm not going back till I've had the vaccine. That's just where I'm at on this. But the reason, if you're one of those people who says, "Hey, I'm going to book a flight down to Florida or, to Dallas because they're going to allow some people and all that stuff," keep in mind this, at any given point, these games could be rescheduled unless you are very easy to work with, unless your flights have got all sorts of assurances that if something goes wrong and you got to reschedule, it's fine. Same with your hotel rooms. Be cautious because as a Browns fan, they're preparing for the playoffs this week. I think they've gotten to be able to do one practice because of all the COVID stuff. These games will be rescheduled at the drop of a hat. Some games may just be outright canceled. As a fan, be prepared that by the end of the season, we're going to be seeing be prepared that by the end of the season, we're probably going to have some teams having played more games than others, and that we're going to just have a situation where we've got a few teams where essentially it's going to be decided by points percentage for the playoffs. That's just what we're going to be seeing. I don't really see a way around that. I don't see them getting every game done. Football's been able to get it through, but then again, football, they plowed through some situations. I mean, they literally made one team play a game without any quarterbacks. I would rather the NHL allow some games to be canceled than just allow for games that are kind of mockeries, honestly. Because I mean, I could see this going into a game where there's a team that's like, oh, we don't have a goalie, and the NHL's like, oh, the equivalent of what happened in the NFL would be as if the Blue Jackets were going to a game and you had all three goalies down. They're like, well, you call somebody up, just have somebody. And it's like they haven't played with the team, or if the NHL is just like, nope, doesn't matter. You have to put in whoever you got. I mean, that would be kind of be the equivalent to what the Denver Broncos had to do in a game. The Browns nearly missed the playoffs, in my opinion, partially because they had a game against the Jets where, like 2 days before the game, their whole receiving core, all four starting wide receivers, were ruled out because of COVID. These things are going to happen. Just be prepared that you're going to be seeing games rescheduled, games postponed. That's just going to be part of it. So it stinks, but it's this or nothing. I mean, that's really the situation we're in. Other big story this week. Good news. Oliver Bjorkstrand signs a 5-year extension with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Woo! Somebody wants to be here. I am excited about it. After all of the garbage with the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation and people discussing that, which we're going to do more of here because, hey, we are nothing if not suckers for punishment. Pierre-Luc Dubois or Oliver Bjorkstrand signed a 5-year deal. Average annual value of $5.4 million. It's pretty similar to what we're seeing around the league, where year one's 4.5, year two 5.25, then 5.35, fourth year's 5.9, last year's $6 million. The reason you're going to see that with a lot of contracts going forward is you need to keep in mind that with the way the collective bargaining agreement was done, there's guarantees for less escrow years from now than there is this year. Meaning how much money the league can hold back to try and make sure they get their 50-50 in revenue. So players are wanting most of these deals. Matthew Barzal just did his deal with the Islanders, and it's something like 3 years, average annual value of $7 million. And it's something like 4, 7, 10 or something. I mean, so he really is this year. He's like, that's fine. I don't need as much. And then those following years, it's really building up. So that's what we're getting out of Oliver Bjorkstrand. Good news for Blue Jackets fans. Bjorkstrand is now is this Blue Jacket signed for the longest on this team. So if you've been holding off on getting a new jersey, Bjorkstrand's the way to go. We were kind of joking about that on the last show because with the exception of Cam Atkinson, no one was signed past the next 3 seasons. Well, now we've got Bjorkstrand signed for the next 6. So that's cool. And he's a great player. It's a great fit. Don Luszczyszyn put out his stat for it or his graph that he normally does on Twitter, which you can always go find. And the good news was that Bjorkstrand's contract, essentially for the entirety of the contract, is set to his quality of play will probably exceed the value of the contract for the entirety of the deal, which is what you want. You want surplus wins out of a contract. You want, and what that means essentially is, if the average player makes X amount of dollars and the average player's worth, so many wins or so many goals or whatnot, you want to have a player worth more. And that's what we're getting out of Bjorkstrand, which is spectacular. He's a great player for this team. I'm happy to see him locked up long-term. He is a good example of a kind of a Jarmo Kekalainen kind of player where it's, drafted, develops in the system, takes his time. If you don't remember, he got the game-winning goal in Cleveland when they won the when they won the Calder Cup a few years back. So it's a good deal for the Blue Jackets. I'm very happy to see him locked up long term there. So we're going to hear a quick message from our friends for the Hockey Podcast Network, and we will be right back after that.
So you like hockey? Congratulations. You're amongst the smartest sports fans in the world. Want to fight about it? Join me, the Hockey Troll, and that snack Polly Cupcakes every Monday and Thursday on the official Caps Chirp podcast, repping the greatest team in the NHL, your Washington Capitals.
Not only do we bring you the best Washington Capitals coverage, but we've got the hottest takes and the tastiest content.
Tune in wherever you get your podcast and at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com. Chirp us on all social media platforms at Caps Chirp.
See you beauties and benders there.
All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Went and grabbed that graph from Dom Luszczyszyn, because I wanted to share it with everyone. And if you haven't looked at these before that he's got on Twitter, it's a really kind of cool way of breaking things down. And what it does is projected. It's essentially a wins above replacement, above an average player for him. So far in his career, Bjorkstrand's been his first few years, he was pretty average. 1.3 wins above average, 1.3 wins, 1 win above average in 2019. Last year, he was a 2.4 win average above 2.4 wins above average for a player. And I mean, essentially, his market value, based on how good he's been, is he should be roughly an $8 million a year player. So the fact that he's not is huge for the Blue Jackets, and that they've got him for the deal that they've got him for. And I mean, he's 25, so when he's done, he'll be 31. Maybe he'll sign another deal after that based on how good he is. I don't know. I mean, that's projecting a lot into the future at that point. So I wouldn't be too wrapped up in what we're going to see in the future out of that second deal. But these are the kind of team. This is the kind of thing that Jarmo Kekalainen wanted to do when he was building this team. Get good players, really good players, and try and get them locked up, under term, players you've developed. And I mean, regrettably, we all know that's not how the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation is turning out. But it was a really interesting piece by Allison Lukin on First Ohio Battery this week. And it was about trying to estimate the trade value for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And it was using a lot of analytic stuff. That same metric there that Dom was using, GSVA. And a lot of it just kind of confirmed things that I thought. Like the one that's been talked about a lot out there is this idea of doing a 1-for-1 Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois. No, that's a bad idea. That's not a trade that should ever be made by the Blue Jackets. It's not something you ever want to see them do, because it's Laine already is at a higher price point in his career. And he's a winger, so he doesn't have the value that a center does, and he doesn't produce as much value as Pierre-Luc Dubois does. And I don't think Pierre-Luc Dubois is as good as he's going to be yet. I think we may have seen the best Patrick Laine has. Now, maybe I'd be wrong. I like the guy. I want him to have a big, long, great career. But I just don't think he's not worth the trade. He's not worth the trade at all. That's my opinion on it. If the something about this kitty paw, the more I'm getting into it, the scent is just not appealing. And maybe that's hurting the overall taste on it. Because it's kind of sweet, but it's not great. Yeah, I don't like that, but I'm going to readjust my recommendation over the show, saying, "Oh, it's a good thing to pick up if you don't like beer." Nah, get a hard cider or something. Get something different. That's not what I would drink. Anyway, another interesting one, and this one maybe the idea for its leave. Since Barzal's re-signed his deal, it's not doesn't feel as imperative, but the idea of and this trade when it gets brought up is always reminding me of Hamilton there. Pierre-Luc Dubois for Matthew Barzal. And the problem there isn't that Matthew Barzal necessarily wants out of New York. it's the situation that the Islanders are wrapped up in a weird cap situation where they've signed so many players for long term that it's coming back to bite them a bit. And they're not great difference making players. I mean, they've got Anders Lee under contract for another 6 seasons at $7 million. They've got Brock Nelson under contract for 5 seasons at $6. They signed John Gabriel Pageau for another 6 years at $5 million. These players just aren't worth it. Now, the thing is, what the Islanders have done, because they signed a 3-year deal, they've got one more RFA year after that for Matthew Barzal to try and sign a big long-term deal. At that point, a couple of these $5 million deals will have fallen off the books, like Andrew Ladd will no longer be under contract. Nick Leddy, Thomas Hickey at 2.5 will be off. Semyon Varlamov, who's got a 3-year deal at $5 million, he'll be off, and at that point he'll be 35. So they probably won't have a problem making that contract work in 3 years. But the idea here was, Dubois wants to be on a bigger stage, and New York would fit that. Barzal is going to be a big ticket, which the Blue Jackets can afford and are set up to afford. Again, makes me think of the Hamilton lyric from The Room Where It Happened, was maybe we should trade, maybe we can solve one problem with another. And that was the idea here. What's interesting about this contract when I saw it is that, or this trade on their thing, is they've got these two players ranked really closely. And it's the kind of thing that when you look around the league, I think Matthew Barzal is talked about as a bigger deal. But when you look at their numbers and how much they affect the games, Barzal and Dubois are really close. So maybe the Blue Jackets need to throw in a little extra something to get a deal like that done. I don't know. Now, I'm not sure if the Islanders are going to move on from Barzal. I think they're in a happy situation. I do think, Barzal, they were talking about people saying that his comparable, he wanted a Mike Marner deal. So if we get to the next end of that contract and they're like, hey, this is the thing. 2 years from now, Pierre-Luc Dubois has got another year as an RFA. Matthew Barzal will be in the final year of his deal, so he can start talking about a new deal. If Barzal sits down across from the Islanders and says, I want 11 or I want 12 a year, and the Islanders think we can't afford that or we can't make it work with our cap, which might happen. I don't know. I don't think the Islanders have a problem with wanting to spend actual money. It's just they don't have. Maybe there's a cap issue. I don't know. At this point, Lou Lamoriello, the way he manages the cap, maybe they'll have the right room. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But I think the Blue Jackets, it's another deal that I think the Blue Jackets will still be open for, because the Blue Jackets, as of right now, in 3 years, the Islanders project to have, tons of cap space, but most teams do because so many contracts will run out by then. But the Blue Jackets would still be in a space where they can trade rights on Pierre-Luc Dubois, which is really, really something there. At that point, you start looking into package deals. Maybe you move multiple pieces. There's some other interesting things in here. I would recommend reading through the article to see that. The ones that get interesting are when you start talking about the Canadians. Now, something that doesn't happen in this article, and it may be because we don't have enough information on these players yet, but if the Blue Jackets were to move Dubois to the Canadians, either Suzuki or Kotkaniemi is coming back, because the Blue Jackets want that center. And honestly, if you're the Canadians, the reason to make that move for Dubois is if you think we want to win now. And honestly, there's probably some marketing in it. The idea of having your number one center, one of your stars being French Canadian, is something the Canadians are in love with. Montreal Canadiens, I've heard it talked about for years when you talk about the Montreal Canadiens, when they're looking for a coach, they're not looking for the best coach. They're looking for the best coach that speaks French. They want a coach. They need, it seems like more than any other market in the NHL, they want and need people who kind of connect with that French Canadian fan base. And I think if the opportunity is there to trade for a potential French Canadian star as your number one center, it may be too much for them. They may want to make that deal. And I think the Canadians are a team who have young center depth that could make that deal happen. So that's my take there. I mean, if I were a betting man and I was saying, where does Pierre-Luc Dubois? If he's not on the Blue Jackets in 3 years, where is he? I think I put my money with the Canadians because I think the Canadians have the assets that would entice the Blue Jackets. I think there's I mean, part of my feeling is that that's where Pierre-Luc Dubois wants to be. And I think the Canadians have the assets the Blue Jackets would be fine. You know, we could make a deal. And I know the Canadians are up against the cap this year, but they drop some guys next year. I mean, Thomas Tatar comes off the payroll. Philip Deneau comes off the payroll. I mean, that's $7-8 million right there. So in the 2 years after, after Dubois' next deal is up and the contract starts looking like a thing that's going to happen again, it's something that could definitely happen there. So I could see that being a fit. And Nick Suzuki would be going into his first RFA negotiation. So maybe when that happens, that's when we see the deal. I don't know. It's just a thought. Just trying to estimate that. Right now, again, the thing I've been saying about the Blue Jackets is they've got time with Pierre-Luc Dubois. You've got the player. Again, if Jarmo Kekalainen doesn't find a deal he wants, I could see Jarmo just walking him right to free agency and having him for the next 4 years. If someone gives us a deal we want, I can see him making the deal. But I don't see him taking a deal he doesn't want just to get the player moved. I see Jarmo Kekalainen saying, until somebody gives him something that he says is worth, maybe something where in that final year, if somebody's offering him something, he goes, you know what, that's worth more than 1 year of Pierre-Luc Dubois. He might take something that feels like an underpayment, but I doubt it. So that's my kind of my view on it. We're in the first week of training camp, or we're in training camp. There's these scrimmages going on. You can see the first full one on YouTube. I believe they're going to be doing the second one here soon. Nobody knows anything yet. I mean, there's this whole, this player kind of looks good. This player kind of looks good. We'll see. We'll discuss it more when we actually get to where players are and what's happening there. Last story I want to talk about this week, Corey Crawford is retired from the NHL. He's a goaltender that's kind of consistently been given the Chris Osgood treatment. Kind of everybody said, well, he did it because he was on a good team. When you look at his underlying numbers, he seems like he was always a really good goalie. It's a player where he signed to go to the New Jersey Devils and then decided he didn't want to do it. Earlier this week, there was something where he left camp to deal with what they called personal reasons and then announced the retirement. Dude changed his mind. I get it. It's one of those things where he'd spent his whole career in Chicago, had a great run, goes to camp with the Devils. I don't know if it's something with the Devils where he realized I'm in a rebuilding situation. Maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe there's a different situation with family. Maybe there's something where he was away from people. I don't know. I mean, it'd be all speculation. But, I mean, here's the thing. When you've had a job like, an NHL player and you've been able to theoretically been able to bank millions of dollars, why do something where you're not happy? I mean, honestly, unless the payday is just that good. If you've got the money in the bank, do what you want and be happy with it. I mean, that's the reason you did all those years in the NHL anyway, right? I mean, to be able to have that freedom and do what you want to do. So congrats to him. Congrats to a great career there. Good for him. Big news. Next time we talk, guys, next time I record is going to be Wednesday night, and we will be 24 hours away from the first Blue Jackets game of the season. They're going to be playing the Predators. It's going to be nuts. I'm getting excited. Let me know on Twitter or on comments on these videos or however you want to. You can always email me, frank@jacketsdebrief.com. I'm thinking what we're going to do going into the season here, because it's going to be such these almost series type events with different teams. We'll probably try and do more things where we're talking with those, with the other guys on the network that host for those teams. So we just got a better sense of this we're gonna get to know these other 7 teams really well over the course of the season. So maybe that'll be the way we go here. But guys, I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for however you get into this show. And hey, for the last time we do a show where there's not going to be a game after it, go Jackets. Please subscribe to the show, follow us on Twitter @JacketsDebrief, and thank you for listening.